Have you ever chased someone who kept running? Have you ever loved someone who kept pulling away? That's frustrating, isn't it? You think they're afraid of losing you, but the truth is, that's not what scares them the most. They don't run because they don't care. They run because something inside them is screaming, "This is dangerous." But it's not you they fear, it's what love represents to them. Today I'm going to break down what avoidants truly fear more than losing you. And when you understand this, you'll stop taking their actions personally and start seeing the truth behind their walls. Avoidants fear losing themselves in a relationship. This isn't just a small discomfort, it's a deep-rooted terror that comes from years, sometimes decades, of conditioning. To them, love doesn't just mean connection. It represents a potential loss of identity, control, and autonomy. They've spent most of their lives depending on themselves, believing that true safety comes from within, not from others. So when intimacy starts creeping in, it doesn't feel like warmth, it feels like a slow suffocation. Imagine someone who has built their entire life on the belief that they must be strong alone. Maybe they grew up in a household where emotions weren't welcomed, where needing someone led to disappointment, or where love was conditional, given only when they behaved a certain way. Over time, they learned that the safest way to navigate relationships was to remain independent, to never fully let anyone in, because doing so meant risking their freedom. And for them, freedom is everything. So when they meet someone who offers them deep love and connection, their nervous system doesn't interpret it as a gift. It interprets it as a threat. A relationship asks them to open up, to rely on someone, to let go of the armor they've spent years perfecting. And this terrifies them. They don't see love as a partnership. They see it as a potential takeover. They fear that if they surrender to intimacy, they'll lose the essence of who they are. They'll be expected to merge, to conform, to compromise, and to become part of a OE instead of just an I. And here's the tricky part. This fear isn't conscious most of the time. They don't wake up thinking, "I'm afraid of losing myself today." Instead, they feel an unexplained discomfort when things get too close. They feel irritated over small things like how much time their partner wants to spend together or how much attention they receive. They feel an urge to create distance, to withdraw, to regain their sense of control. They may not even realize why they're doing it, but the pattern repeats. As soon as a relationship feels too consuming, they push back. But the truth is, love doesn't erase us. The right relationship doesn't take away our identity. It enhances it. The fear of being consumed isn't about the other person. It's about the avoidant's own struggle with trust, vulnerability, and self-preservation. Until they recognize this, they'll keep running, even when love is standing right in front of them. Avoidants don't just fear intimacy, they fear disappointing the people they care about. At their core, many avoidants carry a deep, unspoken belief that they are not enough. This belief often forms in childhood, shaped by experiences where love felt conditional, or where they felt inadequate in some way. Maybe they had parents who had high expectations, who praised achievement but rarely expressed unconditional love. Maybe they were in relationships where they felt like no matter how much they gave, it was never enough. Over time, they learned that being fully seen meant being judged, and being judged meant failing in some way. So when they enter a relationship, they don't just fear closeness, they fear what that closeness will reveal. They fear that if someone truly gets to know them, sees their flaws, their insecurities, their weaknesses, that person will eventually leave. This isn't just paranoia, it's self-protection. The easiest way to avoid failing someone is to never fully commit, to never fully let them in. If they keep a distance, they can maintain control. They can keep up the image of strength, independence, and capability without ever risking the possibility of someone looking too closely and realizing they are not as perfect as they seem. This fear manifests in many ways. It could be an avoidant pulling away after an argument, not because they don't care, but because they believe conflict means they have already failed. It could be them hesitating to say "I love you," not because they don't feel it, but because saying it creates an expectation, one they are terrified they won't be able to meet. Bet the future because they don't trust themselves to deliver on promises. They may choose partners who seem emotionally needy so that they can justify their withdrawal as a reaction to the other person's demands, rather than facing their own fear of inadequacy. At their worst, Avoidants would rather leave first than risk being left. They think if I create the distance, I can control the narrative. If I walk away, I won't have to feel the sting of someone else rejecting me for who I truly am. And so they sabotage love not because they don't want it, but because they fear the day their partner sees all of them, their imperfections, their wounds, their struggles, and decides that they are not worth staying for. In their mind, losing someone is painful, but being told you weren't enough is unbearable. Avoidants have spent their lives mastering one thing: self-reliance. To them, depending on someone else emotionally feels like walking on thin ice, dangerous, unstable, and bound to crack. They have learned either through past relationships or childhood experiences that relying on others leads to disappointment, pain, or even abandonment. So, they make a silent vow to themselves: never need anyone, never rely on anyone, never let someone have power over your emotions. This belief is not just an idea in their head, it's deeply wired into their nervous system. From a young age, they may have experienced situations where needing someone led to hurt. Maybe they had caregivers who were inconsistent, loving one moment and distant the next. Maybe they learned that expressing emotions led to rejection, mockery, or punishment. Over time, they adapted by shutting down their emotional needs, convincing themselves that it was safer to be independent than to risk the pain of unmet expectations. When they enter relationships, this fear of emotional dependence starts to surface in ways they might not even recognize. They resist opening up, not because they don't feel emotions, but because they don't trust what happens when they do. They keep their guard up, maintain an emotional distance, and create just enough space so that they never feel too attached. Even if they love someone, they will instinctively hold back from fully surrendering to that love. They avoid situations that require deep emotional expression, like discussing their fears, their dreams, or their past wounds, because doing so would mean acknowledging that they actually do have emotional needs, and that terrifies them. Ironically, the very thing they fear, dependence, is something all humans naturally crave. Love, at its core, is about interdependence, not isolation. But for avoidants, this concept feels foreign, even threatening. They equate emotional closeness with a loss of control. If they allow themselves to need someone, what happens if that person leaves? What happens if they are hurt? To them, emotional self-sufficiency feels like a survival skill, a way to protect themselves from the pain of loss. This is why, when a partner tries to connect on a deeper level, they might shut down or pull away. It's not rejection, it's defense. They fear that if they let someone in too much, they will become dependent, and that dependence will make them vulnerable. And for an avoidant, vulnerability is the ultimate risk. They would rather keep love at a distance than risk being shattered by it. The real enemy for avoidance isn't the person they're in a relationship with. It's their own emotions. Yeah. They don't just fear love, closeness, or commitment. They fear the overwhelming intensity of their own feelings. For most people, emotions serve as a guide, helping them navigate relationships, express affection, and deepen connections. But for avoidants, emotions feel like a tidal wave that threatens to drown them. They have spent years, sometimes their entire lives, suppressing, ignoring, or intellectualizing their feelings because they never learned how to process them in a healthy way. Many avoidants grew up in environments where emotions were dismissed, invalidated, or even punished. If they cried as children, they might have been told to toughen up. If they expressed sadness or frustration, they may have been met with silence or anger. Over time, they learned that emotions were not something to embrace, but something to control. Or better yet, to avoid entirely. This conditioning follows them into adulthood, making emotional intimacy feel less like a source of warmth and more like a dangerous fire that can spiral out of control. Because they have spent so long avoiding their emotions, they often don't even recognize them as they arise. When they start to feel vulnerable, their instinct isn't to sit with that feeling. It's to escape it. They may withdraw, become cold, or focus on logic to detach from what's happening inside them. If a partner expresses deep love or devotion, instead of feeling joy, they might feel discomfort or even irritation. This isn't because they don't care. It's because those emotions stir something inside them that they don't know how to handle. When conflict arises, avoidants don't react the way others do. Instead of expressing their feelings, they shut down. Instead of seeking comfort, they create distance. Their avoidance isn't about punishing their partner. It's about managing the internal storm that emotions create. They fear that if they let themselves feel too much, they will lose control, and losing control is their greatest nightmare. This fear of emotions doesn't just affect their relationships, it affects their entire lives. It stops them from forming deep friendships, from embracing personal growth, and from truly experiencing the depth of human connection. They may tell themselves they are just not emotional, or that they don't need deep connections. But the truth is, they are simply afraid. Afraid that if they fully embrace their emotions, they will uncover wounds they have buried for too long. Afraid that feeling deeply will lead to pain they won't know how to escape. Afraid that if they truly let go, they might never be able to put themselves back together again. Leo, avoidants don't just struggle with intimacy. They fear true vulnerability more than anything else. To be vulnerable means to be open, exposed, and seen for who they truly are, flaws and all. And that terrifies them. Because deep down, many avoidants carry the belief that if someone truly sees them, they will eventually reject them. They believe that love is conditional, that people only stay when things are easy, and that revealing their true selves is a guaranteed way to lose the connection they secretly crave. For most people, vulnerability is a necessary part of relationships. It builds trust, creates closeness, and fosters real emotional depth. But for avoidants, vulnerability feels like a trap. It requires them to lower their defenses, to let someone else have access to the parts of themselves they've spent years protecting. And that level of exposure feels dangerous. They have spent so much time carefully constructing an image of independence, control, and self-sufficiency that the idea of letting someone see behind that mask makes them uneasy. When they begin to feel emotionally close to someone, they instinctively start pulling away, not necessarily because they want to, but because something inside them is screaming for protection. They might find themselves nitpicking small things in their partner, looking for flaws, or focusing on reasons why the relationship isn't right, just to create distance. They may avoid deep conversations, downplay their emotions, or retreat into solitude when things become too intense. These are all defense mechanisms designed to prevent them from being vulnerable, because in their minds, vulnerability equals risk. Many avoidants have learned that vulnerability in the past led to pain. Maybe they confided in someone they loved, only to be dismissed or betrayed. Maybe they once opened up, only to be made to feel weak or unworthy. Those experiences reinforce the belief that it's safer to keep walls up than to let someone see the real them. Even when they desperately want to connect, that fear of exposure, of being judged or misunderstood, keeps them from fully stepping into love. And so, they stay guarded. They build relationships where they keep one foot out the door, ensuring they never have to risk being completely known. They convince themselves that emotional distance is their choice, when in reality, it's their fear making the decision for them. But the truth they don't realize is that the deepest love, the most fulfilling relationships, only come when we are willing to be truly seen. And no matter how much they try to avoid it, at some point they will have to ask themselves, am I protecting myself? Or am I just keeping love at arm's length because it feels safer? At the core of every avoidance struggle is not a lack of love, but a deep ingrained fear. Fear of losing themselves, fear of being judged, fear of becoming dependent, fear of their own emotions, and fear of true vulnerability. These fears don't exist because they don't care. They exist because caring feels dangerous to them. The walls they build aren't meant to hurt others. They're meant to protect themselves. But in the process of keeping themselves safe, they often end up pushing away the very thing they secretly long for, connection. They are not cold or heartless. They are simply guarding wounds that have never been fully healed. For those who have loved an avoidant, it is easy to feel rejected, unseen, or even unworthy. It can be painful to give love and receive distance in return. But the truth is, their withdrawal is not about you. It is about the way they have been conditioned to survive. Understanding this does not mean tolerating unhealthy behavior, but it does mean recognizing that their avoidance is not personal. They are not running from you. They are running from the emotional risks they have spent a lifetime avoiding. If you truly care for them, the best thing you can do is not chase, not force, but instead show them through your steadiness that love does not have to be a battlefield. And for those who are avoidant, The question is not whether love is dangerous, but whether the life they are living is truly fulfilling. They have mastered independence, self-sufficiency, and emotional control, but at what cost? Is it really freedom if they can never fully experience the depth of love? Is it truly strength if they are constantly retreating at the first sign of emotional risk? Avoidance may feel like a defense, but in reality, it is a prison. And at some point, they must ask themselves whether they are protecting their heart or simply depriving it of the connection it deserves. The truth is, love does not erase us. It does not consume, judge, weaken, or trap us. The right kind of love expands us, strengthens us, and teaches us that we don't have to carry everything alone. Avoidants fear losing themselves in relationships, but what if true love actually helps them find the parts of themselves they have long buried? What if instead of running from closeness, they leaned into the possibility that love could be safe, that they could be seen and still accepted, that they could surrender and still remain whole? In the end, avoiding love does not prevent pain, it only delays it. Running keeps them safe for a while, but it also keeps them empty. The greatest transformation happens when they decide to stop running, when they allow themselves to step into love with open hands instead of guarded fists. Because love, real love, is not about losing oneself. It is about becoming whole in the presence of another. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this message. If this resonated with you, if you found value in these words, or if you know someone who needs to hear this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps spread these insights to those who need them most. You drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if you're on a journey of self-discovery, healing, or personal growth, remember, change starts with awareness. The more we understand ourselves, the more we can break free from the patterns that hold us back. Stay strong, stay open, and most importantly, stay true to yourself. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.